So again, McQuarrie, because he steps into this, he just has like a full mixture of everything that came before it while still putting his own stamp on the MI franchise. Hey everyone, welcome back to Candid Cinema. I'm Amanda, otherwise known as AMXND Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Today I will continue my reviews for Mission Impossible with Rogue Nation. Now, I hadn't seen a Mission Impossible film in theaters. I missed out on Ghost Protocol. I don't know why I missed out on Ghost Protocol. I feel so bad saying that like Rogue Nation was my first one, but it's stellar in IMAX. And I think that Christopher McQuarrie, Tom Cruise, and Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg and Rebecca Ferguson, Jeremy Renner, they have a very, very good dynamic that really works here. And I think that's why I like Rogue Nation, Fallout, and now obviously Dead Reckoning. They've been working together the whole time, so I'm really happy to see them back together again. Their unit is just so strong, and I really do love them. So this opening, it starts differently than the others. And the reason why I like this is that it feels like it went back even further to the roots of the television series, because A, we cut right into the action, and B, the score is the first thing that you hear when you see all the production companies ahead of the actual opening. So you have the score coming in softly, and then it cuts right into the action. And now here's the thing. You want to put the team on full display. And I think you have a very good team, including Jeremy Renner as Brandt, that they work quite effortlessly together. Like, I love them so much. You have Benji out in the field, number one. So you have Benji out in the field. He's like all camouflaged, and he's talking to Brandt. So obviously that friendship kind of flourished. Ethan Hunt's nowhere to be seen. And from the very opening of Rogue Nation, you're seeing how strong the other IMF agents are. Luther comes into the mix. They said, wait, aren't you in like Malaysia? He's like, I am, but Benji needed my help. And I'm like, I love that dynamic, the two of them, because technically they have been Ethan's friend for a very long time, more so than the other people that they're working with, keeping them an integral part of the friendship for IMF. And I really like that they're showcasing other people. They have to get a package on the plane, and they're all trying to like open the doors. They're seeing like if we can stop it. Benji can't do it. Luther can't do it. And then you have the score coming out, and Ethan's doing his run, and he's running to the plane, and Tom Cruise actually does this. Tom Cruise jumps on the plane. He jumps on the plane, and he hangs off the side of the plane. He actually did this. So when you're watching that particular scene happen, you're like, oh my God, he is hanging on the side of a plane. Okay. And it's so realistic, and it just takes your breath away, because you're like, he's actually doing it. And then again, McQuarrie does to create that level of suspense. There's these really like slow zoom ins, like on little objects, whether it's a computer or like an extreme close up, or like on the package that they need to get. Like the cuts are really quick there, but it's the zoom ins that create that tension along with the score that's really fun. And McQuarrie, because he steps into this, he just has like a full mixture of everything that came before it while still putting his own stamp on the MI franchise. And I really like that. I think that out of every director, obviously De Palma started it all, so he's excluded. But I think out of every director, he was able to bring it into the new age, bring the spies into a new age. I love all the tech that was used in Rogue Nation, but it's also like they've been using it the whole time. It's not like they're learning new tech. They're just like, it's natural. I love the one where it's like the phone with the lock, and you just put the phone literally up to the lock, and it'll just rearrange on the phone. And you can open like whatever door that you can. And I'm like, that's just so much easier than trying to pick a lock like they used to. I really like the opening credits here. I love that they did the montage again. I really like the title card. It's more sleek and polished, where I think that the other title cards were a bit clunky. This one here is just like IMF's revamped, which is technically what has happened here. IMF's back on board. Brandt's working in the administration, so at least Ethan has that link there. But here the CIA is kind of taking over IMF. And what they don't understand is that we need to fly under the radar. We need to be undercover. We have these like black market villains that only we can take out, because the CIA overtaking us will not have that level of secrecy in regard to taking certain people out. And that's what the CIA fails to understand. We have Alec Baldwin here playing Henley, and he's just like, well, they did X, Y, and Z before. They're kind of going through all the movies, and I thought that was really funny. But Brandt's like, I can neither confirm or deny without the secretary present, and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was just, it's funny. So they had a back and forth, and I'm like, this humor, this level of humor, the sarcasm, the dryness of it, I really vibe with that. And I think that's why I really liked Rogue Nation as well. They're trying to overtake them. And while all this is happening, Ethan's dealing with his own stuff because he's undercover. And knowing that the CIA wants to bring him in and overtake IMF, he's like, I need to go like rogue here, because there's this rogue nation called the Syndicate. And Solomon Lane is the leader of the Syndicate. How we're introduced to the Syndicate, how Ethan's introduced to the Syndicate. So he's in this record shop, which I think he knows, like that's where he has to go get his missions from. This girl gives him a record, so he goes to play the record and scans his face, does all of that, and it's a setup. So he sees that Solomon Lane, obviously he doesn't know who he is at the time, but I'm just using it for name purposes here. He has a gun to the girl's head, and Ethan's like locked up in this gas chamber that is created by Solomon Lane to find out who Ethan is and what he looks like and all of that. So they know that now. They know about IMF, and the fact that the Syndicate can kind of infiltrate IMF technology and be like, you know, your mission, if you choose to accept it, the exact same thing, and then do that twist to Ethan. He's like, how are they doing this? Like, we need to take them down, because if you're able to crack into that and have all of these codes and all of this, like, you can get into absolutely anything and just take it down from the inside. And that's what's even worse. The Syndicate storyline kind of reminded me of Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D., and I think that's why I really liked it. So the whole purpose of the CIA taking over, or like trying to dissolve the IMF and taking over, is because they want oversight on what's happening, and Brandt is like the only one standing in the way of that. It's like, it's not happening. So we cut to Ethan in chains. He's locked up. He doesn't have a shirt on. And I think it was like necessary almost to have him presented in that way, because I think it's more so like at his age, he's still capable of doing like the most incredible things. So he's here locked up. Then some girl comes in, and it's Rebecca Ferguson. We are introduced to Elsa Faust, who I absolutely love. He doesn't know her yet, but obviously he's taken by her. She takes off her shoes, puts them on the table, and she's ready to like torture him. But there's also this other guy named Vinter, who's known as like the bone crusher or the bone doctor. He's ready. He has like his knives, his hammers, and all of that stuff. So Elsa's like, we were sent to bring him in alive. Can't kill him. We need information. But obviously he's like, I don't care. We're going to beat the information out of him. And he's like, that's not happening. So the same time that Elsa is trying to like defend Ethan, but still be on their side, because she has to prove herself to Solomon Lane, we find out that she's a part of British intelligence. So the British intelligence agency sent Elsa to infiltrate the Syndicate so they can get information. And she doesn't know, because this happens later on, but I'm just going to say it. She doesn't know that she's being double-crossed by Attlee, who's her superior, because Attlee and the Prime Minister of England had a conversation about the Syndicate. So Solomon Lane used to be in the British intelligence. They had that conversation, and the Prime Minister is like, I cannot wield all this power. The Syndicate is merely a conversation, but if you take it too far, it could fall into the wrong hands, which it did with Solomon Lane, and it could be really hard to just get rid of. And there's so much on this ledger that if it falls into Solomon Lane's hands, which he does, because he just leaves the British intelligence, he's like, I'm going to do it myself. I already have all of this information. I have already structured everything. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can just take this and run. And he does. So we find that towards the end of the film, and it's one of the best reveals ever. It's so good. But leading up to that, Ilsa's helping Ethan. Ethan wants to get Solomon Lane. He kind of loses himself. And I think that he's more emotional towards this, which I really liked. I know I said that I didn't like how irrational and emotional he was in MI3, but for some reason, that level of intensity in Rogue Nation was warranted and made more sense. So after Ethan gets out, he calls Brent. He's like, the syndicate's real. And then after that, Benji's working with CIA now, unfortunately, because the CIA is trying to get everyone from IMF to work for them. Luther kind of dodged it. He like retired. Brent's staying in there so he can keep tabs. And then Benji's just doing some tech. So Benji gets a invite to an opera, and when he gets there, he gets like hit with like a package. This guy crosses him, puts on these glasses, and it's Ethan. He had lied to Henley through a lie detector test. He's like, I don't know Ethan Hunt. I don't even talk to him. We're not friends anymore, blah, blah, blah. And then he just like, he's like, I hopped on a plane to go like help him out. So he puts on these glasses like, yeah, Ethan, oh my God. And then Benji is the one who's in the field and doing all of this while Ethan's behind the scenes at the opera. So Ethan thinks that Solomon Lane is going to be at the Opera House. He doesn't know that the Chancellor of Austria is at the Opera House tonight. So then Benji's freaking out. He's like, not only do we have the leader of the syndicate who's going to be present tonight, but we also have the Chancellor of Austria. What are the odds that they're both here tonight? And then one of them won't get, like, he's not going to get assassinated and all of that. So then like the CIA's present, IMF's present, this guy's present, and like anything bad can happen. So as Benji is trying to like scan the crowd with some pretty, again, high-tech stuff, it's kind of like an iPad, but it was actually the music, the sheet music that was turned into like a visual camera that he used so he could like sneak into it. And I'm like, it's like, that is so cool. I love that. So while that's happening, Ethan's backstage. And this is the moment where I fell in love with Rebecca Ferguson. Rebecca Ferguson is in this gorgeous yellow gown, and she is about to take out the Chancellor of Austria because she has to prove herself to Solomon Lane to stay in his group with the syndicate so she can give the information to BI, British intelligence. She doesn't know that Solomon Lane has 2 of his henchmen present just in case she won't do it. So there's 2 people. Those 2 people, one was sent to kill the Chancellor of Austria. One was sent to kill Elsa if she failed to kill the Chancellor. You have this beautiful crescendo of the opera music that is being used here to kind of wait it out to see the exact moment when they have to kill the Chancellor. So you have all of this. There's one shot of Rebecca Ferguson in that yellow dress getting the gun ready to snipe him out. And I'm like, this woman, I'm like, Christopher McQuarrie, you did a fantastic job because no one knew who Rebecca Ferguson was. Now we do. This girl has Dead Reckoning and Dune Part 2 in the same year, and Silo's been killing it on Apple TV Plus. So I'm like absolutely thrilled for her. So we have this, we have a more like quiet and stealthy side of Ethan behind the stage. It feels like an eternity because you're listening to the opera, you're listening to the music, but it's all perfectly timed. Ethan, within split second, gets the flute that the guy was holding to make it seem like that's also like a sniper, like a gun. There's like a little bit of a blade in there. And Ethan grabs it, looks at Ilsa Faust, looks at Rebecca Ferguson, looks at the other guy who's like sent to kill her. And it's all leading up to this moment. So Ethan, very smart on his feet, instead of like killing either one of them or taking a shot on either one of them, it's safer to kind of like shoot the Chancellor to get him out of there. So what Ethan does is he shoots him in the arm, and then obviously Ilsa misses the shot, and then the other henchman misses the shot as well towards Ilsa. So then they're all trying to get out of there. And I really love that Ilsa and Ethan meet up. It's an unspoken thing. It's an unspoken attraction between the 2 of them. And I think that they playfully did that. And it was so necessary to bring this in for Ethan, especially in the 5th movie, where they didn't even mention Julia. in Rogue Nation, so that made me laugh. You kind of see that there could be something between him and Elsa, but it's more of a respect and understanding that they're in this field. There's no room for like relationships. There's no room for love here. So I like that they played up to that. So they get in the car after they leave the opera house, and Benji's there driving. He's like, who's this? What's happening? Blah, blah, blah. So Ethan's trying to like get anything from her, so it's basically a pat down, but she's obviously understanding and allows that. So there's like a USB, there's a whole bunch of stuff that he takes from Elsa, including her name. So Elsa's like, I have to get out of this car or else Solomon Lane is going to know something's up and I'm going to be screwed. So I have to roll out of this car to make him think that like I got away from you again. And it's like the second time that this has happened. So she rolls out of the car, knows where to find her. She goes back to Solomon Lane, like, you might as well just like kill me like a man. If you're not going to trust me, you're not going to trust me to do my job, all of that. And he ends up killing the henchman behind. And Solomon's like, I know you're smart and I'll keep you, but like this can't happen again. Long story short, Ethan's like, we have to find Elsa. They go to Morocco, this whole Casablanca scene. Like, so good. I love this action set piece. Like, it's so good. So what happens is that in order to get into the ledger, Benji cannot put on a face mask like they normally would to walk in, because when you're walking into security, you have to have like identical matches for the person that you're impersonating. Benji can't do that. So instead of putting someone else's face on, they're going to try to switch the profiles in this like gigantic water chamber in order for Benji to surpass security, get in there, get the ledger, get out. All within seconds. It's all within seconds, within minutes. Okay. And I think that this was really intense, the more intense one that I've seen. And again, Tom Cruise holds his breath underwater to perform this stunt. Crazy. You know he's the one doing it in this water chamber, so it becomes even more intense. So what I really liked is that you get to see this glove that he's wearing and his oxygen, which is really important. So visually, it's used more so than like trying to keep track of his oxygen for himself. It's more so for the audience to keep the time going. So you have the time and the oxygen percentage on his arm while he's going down there. I thought that was really interesting. Visually, it helps. So you have that countdown, you have him struggling within the chamber, but it all seems to go wrong for Ethan. He loses the like little card, the profile card. The blades start spinning in the water that keep hitting him, and it's supposed to freeze, which is what Ilsa Faust is supposed to do, but they override it because they didn't have a fourth person helping in this case. So Ethan's like struggling, and in like the last second, this is why it was perfectly edited. You have Benji walking through the security where they have to check if the walk is the same as the profile within the computer. So as he's walking through, they're checking the profile on the computer. And then within the last second, because there were two profile cards, Ethan had no idea which one like fell, which one was the right one. So he just plopped it in. But then he couldn't breathe. He was choking, basically drowning. And he like loses the grip after on the vault to get out. Benji gets through, gets the ledger. And then in the last second, Elsa's like, I can't let him die like this. So Elsa jumps into the water chamber and saves Ethan. After that, he's back on ground level, and Benji's like, oh my God, that was like the most intense thing I've ever had to do. And he has the ledger. Benji has the ledger. All of a sudden, Ilsa takes the USB from Benji. Sis Y, double cross, has to get it to Atlee for her British intelligence. So what's funny is that Ethan's completely out of it because he drowned. He has to come to, but he's like, I'm Ethan Hunt. I have to chase her down. We have to get to a car immediately. So we have a car chase. I am a sucker for a motorcycle chase. So Rebecca Ferguson leading the motorcycle chase, chef's kiss. I was obsessed with that. Ethan's driving. He shouldn't be driving. At the same time, Brent and Luther are together. Now, Luther thinks Brent's shady. So we have that little dynamic there where Luther's like, I swear to you, you called me because you said that Ethan was about to die. Either way, from Solomon Lane or from freaking the CIA, because they just don't trust him and they need to bring him in. So he's dying either way. Luther's like, nah, I don't trust you. I'm going to come and save my boy myself. The second I sniff some shadiness from you, It's dead time. So I love Luther for that reason, protecting his boy. I appreciate it. They're there. They get another car. They don't know where they are, but they're in the same location. This car chase happens. Ethan's terrible. Cannot keep up. And Benji's like losing his head. So funny. So it's a very long car chase. They're going downstairs. Obviously, it's easier on a motorcycle than in a car to go down steps. And like Benji's hilarious because Ethan's like so unfazed because he's still out of it. So they're going, they have the car chase. They bump into Brent and Luther. So they know that the whole team's together. But when they saw each other through the windows, I was like, hey, how's it going? It's good. All right. Car chase. And then they're like in the car chase with him. So they pick them off one by one. Then Ethan and Benji get into like this car accident, which I don't know how the hell they survived, but I'm just like, okay, they put their seatbelt on. Sure. I guess the way it rolled and the way it landed, it was fine. So they landed on the roof of the car. Benji wasn't coming to. And then there was someone on one of the motorcycles approaching the car, and Ethan's like struggling to get the belt out. He's like, oh shit, like this, I'm gonna die. And then in the next time, Brent and Luther like hit the guy. So I found that was funny. And then there was a moment of like, oh my God, we're okay. Benji comes to, and he's like, oh my God, he's screaming. And it was such a good moment. Ethan gets out of the car and they're still trying to help Benji. So Elsa zooms by, and Ethan, without even telling them, he's still so dazed, gets on the motorcycle and just books it. So the funniest moment, you see Luther and you see Brent just like pop their heads out above the car. They're like, where the hell is he going? He's so unstable. He goes, but he loses Elsa. Here's where it gets interesting now because Elsa has the ledger. Ethan asked Benji if he made a second copy. Of course, he made a second copy. So they also have one up on him now. Here's where it gets a bit complicated, and that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5 star rating. I think it's really good up until this moment. And that's why I wanted to spend a bit more time getting into like what's actually happening with everybody, because there's way too much to keep track of. Like this script is so intricate that like I had to write things down. Like it was crazy. So in this kind of like wrap up going into the third act, here's the thing. What Elsa does is that she has a meeting with Atlee, which is her boss. She puts the USB on the newspaper, which is a big mistake, because what ends up happening is that USB gets wiped because Atlee has the phone underneath. No one's supposed to have access to the syndicate. No one's supposed to have access to this ledger. And for some reason, Atlee is the one who's orchestrating this entire thing. And it doesn't make sense for her to go back to Solomon Lane now with an empty USB. She can die. They obviously don't care about her. She doesn't know any of this. We find out later because Ethan meets up with Elsa to have this conversation. He knows that this ledger cannot be accessed because it's a red box. That means there's only one person, which is the Prime Minister, as I stated before, that can get into this red box. The Prime Minister is the one like who knows about the syndicate. He knows that, you know, all of this is happening. He's orchestrating it. Not the case. So they develop this plan and they say it without saying it. They're like, we have to get to the Prime Minister. Okay, they have to get to the Prime Minister. That seems very simple. And what happens here is that they bring in Henley. Henley has no idea what's happening. Okay, but they have to bring the CIA in, and Elsa has a meeting with Ethan. She gives like these 3 options in how to move forward with Solomon Lane, considering knowing what is going to happen. He has to end up with Solomon like face to face eventually. So there's all this commotion. The whole team's with them, and they have this plan in place, knowing that they have to get to the Prime Minister before Solomon Lane does. And in this case, I don't want to say Elsa like planted this, but Elsa did plant this because they end up taking Benji. So they take Benji, and they have to do this entire like Prime Minister grab and all of this in order to like also save Benji. This is all for Benji. I know it's the syndicate trying to take it down, but they're trying to save Benji. They made it really personal because why not take Luther? They didn't take Luther, they took Benji. So everyone is very attached to Benji, and that's why they took him, to create that like emotional crutch there. They go to this party, the Prime Minister's there, Henley arrives, And at that moment, you think that Brandt is being shady by calling Henley in. He's like, I can't do this. I have to tell them. I have to tell the CIA that you're doing this. Like, it is a matter of like life or death here, blah, blah, blah. So we're thinking, the audience is like, oh shit, like he's going to double cross Ethan. Why would you double cross Ethan? So we find out within the room, we get the prime minister in there because there's like a security threat, whatever. Henley tells him that. And Atlee is in the room as well. So they're talking and they're trying to get the information out of for the syndicate. And the prime minister's like, I never authorized this. He tells the whole story, as I said before. He says it all again. So in this room, Henley's the only one that has no idea what the actual plan is. So after the prime minister says it to Atlee, and then in front of Henley, Atlee removes the mask. He's like, I'm Ethan Hunt. We're going to protect you, blah, 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 all of this. So they needed that information for Henley to understand the only team of operatives that could actually do this is bloody IMF. There's no way that anyone could have done this with the oversight from the CIA. So the only way to make Henley understand was to put him in there without knowing anything. And it was perfect. Genius. Confusing the first time you watch it. Because you're thinking that Brandt's crossing him, but he's not. That was just part of the plan. Actual Atlee comes in. What happens here is that they shoot them with truth serum. So they take the shot to the prime minister. He word vomits everything. Takes a shot to Atlee. Also word vomits everything. So everyone knows about the syndicate. Everyone knows like what IMF is capable of. And then they know what's happening with the ledger in Solomon Lane. They get access. The red box, because of the prime minister, they want to close this down. Ethan, all he does, this is what's so genius about it. He remembers one bank with the amount of money in it in order to free Benji, who has a bomb strapped on him. So he's face to face with Lane and he's like, guess what? This is how good Ethan Hunt is. Because F is going to be gullible enough to believe this, okay? He tells Solomon Lane that this one bank account, he transfers the money to him and all of this to get Benji out. It was like $50 million, or pounds, sorry, 50 million pounds. Please let my friend go. He's like, Lane, I'm the ledger. I have memorized every single file, every single bank, every single thing that you had on that ledger. I memorized it. It's me. So if you kill me or you kill anything that's important to me, you are going to have to take that risk within seconds. Who's going to believe it? But guess what? Ethan Hunt is that good of an operative, okay, that Solomon Lane believed him. He took a risk with that information. Benji could have been dead in 2 seconds if he's like, yeah, okay, you didn't memorize anything. Believed him, didn't take that risk. Benji's safe. And then what happens is that Benji like leaves. He's like, okay, here's your phone. Ethan gives the phone. That's where they're hiding out, whatever. Elsa's next because they're all like, okay, we need Ethan alive. We have to kill Elsa. So what Ethan does is that he's being used as like a bodyguard, and Elsa and him are moving all over the place. So there's another action set piece that comes after this. Elsa's faced with like the bone doctor, the bone crusher again, and they have a knife fight, which was really cool. And then Ethan's trying to get Solomon Lane into this one specific area to trap him. And they go to this like opened area that has like a big square in the middle of the floor, one of these like stores or whatever. And all Ethan has to do is get there. So he's like all bloody. He's beaten. Like he and Elsa had like some like tag team fights as well, which is really cool. So he jumps into the floor and he gets into the right moment because Solomon Lane follows him in there. This was just like genius. They do get him in there. And then one by one, because they did call the syndicate the anti-IMF, one by one, Ethan stands up and it's like, it's pitch black in there because it closes off from the top and it's so cool. Pitch black in there is where the lighting comes in, makes it look amazing. And you see that Solomon Lane moves forward and he's like, he hits something and he's like, no, like this is glass. So then all the walls come up. And then you see that like Brandt comes to one side. You see Luther come from one side. You see Benji come from one side. And then you see Ethan with Elsa slowly moving forward. And I'm like, this is the first time where they didn't explain the plan. And I think the reason why they didn't explain the plan is because one, shock value, because I was like, oh, that is so sick, because you're not going to see that coming whatsoever. So they locked that up. And the second thing is that it's so intricate that it's better that it was executed in that way without going through the motions of a standard mission for them. So I think that this worked more effectively because you're just in it for the last, like, I'd say the last like 30 minutes. You're like, you don't know what's happening, who's real, who's fighting for what. It's very well written. So you have them approaching this box, and then he's like, we are IMF. And I was like, that is so cool. Considering where it's placed, like with Rogue Nation, what happened with Ghost Protocol, you're like, yeah, we are IMF, man. Like, and we got you. There's only like one secret, impossible mission, like task force that can take anybody out and do it properly in honoring like every single government. So they lock him in this, and then the gas comes up again, exactly what he did to Ethan. So I thought that was a really like great way to bookend it. They lock him in here, and they put him in the back of a police car. Elsa and Ethan have this like little moment. She hugs him. There's something there, but it's like they didn't overdo it with a kiss. And I respect that because they respect each other as spies. And then she just gets into her car and she's like, you know where to find me. They leave. And I really like these end credits. And I know that I kind of went in depth a bit more for Rogue Nation, but there's a lot more that happens in this movie. So the end credits here, and Tom Cruise did this. Okay, the reason why Rogue Nation is unique is because Christopher McQuarrie used the team. Realistically, if you're watching this, sure, Ethan Hunt is in it, obviously, but Christopher McQuarrie gave everybody else way more to do, especially Benji and Brent. They gave them way more to do. And then in the credits, Tom Cruise is one of the last ones, I think. So you have like Ving Rhames, you have Simon Pegg, you have Jeremy Renner, you have Rebecca Ferguson, even ahead of Tom Cruise. And I thought that was such like a nice little touch there because you're showcasing the team. The Mission Impossible films are nothing without the team. Sure, it's Ethan Hunt and the team, but I really liked that they did that at the end of Rogue Nation because that's what set it apart as well, because there was such a heavy focus on the team. You saw it from the very beginning, and it doesn't hit until you watch those end credits where you're like, you know what? It started with Benji in the field and Brent was listening to him, and then Ethan just comes in clutch at the end. You know what I mean? So it's like, you have to see the way this was structured and the fact that it's like everybody came together to capture Solomon Lane. Like, that's the IMF team. This is the team that we have going into Fallout. So I thought that this was great. Like I said, it's a 4 out of 5 for me, just because it was a bit too much. It was a bit too detailed, and it can get a bit overstuffed considering the length of this video right now. Like, there was a lot of things that you had to pick up on, that you had to pay attention to. I'm not saying it's hard to follow. I'm just saying it's a lot of things to put into it. And that's why it felt a bit like, oh my God, like what else can they possibly do? Please let me know if you like Rogue Nation as much as I do. Is it high up there in your MI ranking? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can always follow me over at AMXND Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And if you guys want to help me grow this wonderful channel, you can find out ways to do that in the bio below. I'll catch you guys next time. Keep watching movies.